In a class, while a student is trying to study, others are bullying another student. The leader of the bullies tells his mate to bring the guy they are bullying to a store later, and they ask him why he said that. The leader explains that they should get money from him, as although his parents are poor, the poorer the family is, the more their parents want to treasure and spoil their kids. He says no harm will also come to them since the guy's parent has no power. As the leader continues to boast to his mates on how he will make money from the guy, the student who has been studying stands in front of him and stabs him in the eye with his pen. The student is called to the teacher's lounge where a teacher expresses his disbelief for his behavior. He asks why he stabbed his fellow student, even though he was not the student being bullied. The student keeps quiet, but at the teacher's insistence, he says they were being loud. The teacher does not understand him, and the student, whose name is Kang Pildu, repeat that the students were being loud and that is why he stabbed him. The news spreads at school that Kang Pildu stabbed a student who was loud when he was trying to study. They say he must be a psychopath, and they start calling him Psychopath Kang Pildu. Pildu's mantra is that he does not care what they call him, and he doesn't care what method he uses, but if there is something he wants, he will get it no matter what. Pildu is now a prosecutor and his assistant informs him of his meeting, where he talks about the Manhwa group. He explains that it is a new company that runs a loan business, but they are branching to other sectors, and they took in 500 billion in just profits the previous year. He further explains that the Manhwa group looks fine on the outside, but that is not the case as they are no ordinary company. He says they have absorbed the nation's gangs to expand their influence and power, and the problem is that, as they grow in size, the number of crimes they commit also rises. Pildu says the group regularly blackmails and physically assaults those who are in the way of their business, and they do not hesitate to murder either. Pildu then drops the bombshell that the group can carry out all those activities because the person supporting them is the National Assembly member, Kang Ildo, who is the group's owner. The others are shocked at Pildu's words as Kang Ildo is one of the presidential candidates. The leader of the group dismisses the meeting and tells Pildu to wait behind. As the others leave the room, he asks Pildu why he has an obsession with the case. Pildu replies that he is not obsessed as it is only his job to investigate if a crime is being committed. Pildu seems to have had this same conversation with his mother as she tries to stop him from investigating the Manhwa group, but he refuses despite her pleas. The leader points out that if things go wrong, the entire public prosecutor's office might start on the wrong foot with the future president, so Pildu should just stop pursuing the issue. His phone rings at that moment, and Pildu moves to leave the room, but the leader stops him asking if he has heard the news that his mother has passed away. At the memorial service of Pildu's mother, some men are seen removing the flowers and clearing the place. They talk about how no one came there at all and it all seems to be a waste of time. Pildu arrives at this moment and stands staring at the photo of his mom they threw on the ground. The men tell him to leave, but he ignores them and says he wants to know how she died. Pildu had previously gone to the coroner who told him the higher-ups had interfered with the case and he could not get anything from the autopsy report. Pildu's mother's death was ruled as a suicide, but the coroner does not think it is true. Pildu tells the men they did a really messy job on his mom, and he is sure she could not even scream with what they did to her as they must have stabbed her without a break. As he continues to talk, one of the men asks him why he is interfering when he does not have a warrant. He touches Pildu telling him to leave, but Pildu breaks his hand and kicks him to the ground. Another man attacks him saying he has made a mistake, but Pildu also easily beats him up and says he is no longer doing things with the law but in his own way, and anyone who gets in his way is dead. At the Manhwa group company, Kang Tigu, who is the third son of Kang Ildo, tells his brothers that Pildu messed up everyone at the funeral. He asks if they will do to him, and Kang Mu, the second son, looks at his elder brother and says it would not be good for the presidential election, and asks if they should do something before the issue gets worse. Kang Chawuk, the first son, says they shouldn't just sit back and watch. He then turns to their father and asks what they should do to Pildu. Ildo replies that it is no different for his child and they should kill Pildu as they would do for anyone who gets in their way. It turns out that Pildu is the fourth son of Ildo. Three men who are friends are talking about treating themselves to a meal when Pildu passes by. They recognize him as the guy who stabbed a bully in the eye with his pen as they went to the same school together. They wonder why he is in such a shabby area, and they talk about the nickname he was given then. One of the men stares at Pildu, remembering an issue that occurred when they were still in school. In a flashback, he was being bullied by a group of students who threatened to shove cigarettes down his throat. A teacher arrives and stops the student. The leader of the bullies says he just wants to borrow the guy's clothes for pee. Despite seeing the guy's bleeding nose, the teacher, who seems scared of the bullies, leaves and tells them to prepare for their next class. The bullies make fun of the teacher, and they continue to taunt the guy. The leader then stomps on his eyeglasses before leaving. The guy feels dejected as he sits on the floor, holding up his eyeglasses to see if it is still functioning. Pildu arrives at this moment and tells him to move out of the way as he wants to throw away some trash. The guy asks what the point is in throwing away trash when the trash that needs to be cleared remains. He then brings out a box cutter, reasoning that he chose death because of the bullies. He tries to slash his wrist, but Pildu stops him, saying no one will know even if he does that. He then says he will clear the trash for him since he is on cleaning duty. As the students talk about Pildu stabbing the bully with a pen, the man watches him, reasoning that he truly took care of the trash for him without blinking an eye. He wonders if it was just because of him. Back to the presence, the man ponders that he should tell his friends about his involvement with Pildu, but he doesn't because he is scared of him. Pildu enters the building and goes up to his room. As he enters the room, he is quick to notice that someone else is in the building, and he uses his hand to hold the knife the man wants to stab him with. He tells the man to try taking off his shoes the next time he enters someone else's house uninvited. He smashes the man to the ground and asks who sent him. Another man arrives holding a knife. He also attacks Pildu, who kills him easily. Pildu enters his apartment further to meet another man drinking from his fridge. The man asks if Pildu is really a prosecutor, as he is going to settle for cheap, thinking he would be able to kill him quickly. As the man inspects his dead comrade, Pildu notices a lady who is almost unconscious, and he asks about her. The man he brought her from the floor below. He explains that he had to make an alibi to make Pildu seem like a junky, corrupt prosecutor attempting to violate a neighbor. Pildu tells the man that he lacks creativity, as that would not be enough to smear his name. He says the man will have to kill the girl's parents to gather more attention. At the Manhwa group company, a man tells Kang Ildo that the man they hired to kill Pildu will handle the task as long as he is paid right, and Ildo has to take care of the mess he left. He slyly taunts Ildo, saying he is sure he knows about how things go around and that one word is enough to bury him alive. He then tries to show support, saying a son becoming a prosecutor should pay solid support to his father. He tells Ildo that if things go around, he will not be able to avoid taking responsibility, as the higher-ups won't just watch anymore, and he taunts again that since he climbed that high from rock bottom, he'll know better than anyone what would happen in the end. Ildo, who has been ignoring the man, turns at that word. The man quickly says he wishes Ildo the best, so he should not take things personally. But with the presidential elections around the corner, things need to be wrapped up quickly so he can bury what he did in the past. Ildo moves towards the man, and with a smirk, he says they will have to dig the whole of South Korea to bury it. The man berates him for making a joke, but Ildo ascertains that he is not joking. Ildo then asks the man if he should teach him how he survived at rock bottom. He then continues without waiting for a reply that he never spares anyone who gets in his way, with no exceptions, not even family. The man's eyes widen in fear as Ildo moves close to him, saying Pildu is not someone he can handle, so he should not get in his way or he will bury him alive. With a shaky voice, the man says he was only trying to help, but it seems he has stepped out of line. He says he will call off the man he hired to kill Pildu, but as he calls the man, Pildu picks the call as the man is unconscious. Pildu asks to speak with his father, and Ildo collects the phone and says Pildu is not smart despite being a prosecutor. But he should have learned to read the room, as he should have given him the position of prosecutor general. He asks Pildu if he killed all those men at the funeral just because of the death of his mother, and Pildu replies that he does not understand what his mother's death meant to him. He explains that the only reason he was able to withstand was because his mother played the role of his safety pin and someone took that away from him. Meanwhile, Pildu had tied the man down in his apartment. He leaked the gas pipe and left the apartment while calling his father. Now, the gas catches fire, and as the apartment blows up, he tells his father that he will kill everyone involved in his mother's death, with no exceptions, and not even family. Ildo smiles at these words, saying Pildu is finally starting to act more like his child. The lady who was in Pildu's apartment is wheeled out to be taken to the hospital. Her mother quickly rushes to her side asking the medical attendants if she is okay. They tell her she doesn't have to be worried as the person who reported the incident performed first aid on her. The police arrives and asked her questions about the incident. She recounts what she saw and remembers that the man who came in last had red eyes. At a bar, Tigu tells his men that they have to make use of the opportunity that Pildu has created for them. He says he was not planning on doing anything before the elections, but things have changed and even his older brothers are walking on eggshells, so their father must be so frustrated. He says they will pull Pildu down and it is time their father finds out who has been pulling the weight for them to make it that far. One of the men asks if they should wait till after the elections and Ildo might be annoyed if they do something flashy. But Tigu says that sloth-like attitude is why they are in their current situation. He points out that his brothers are each getting affiliate companies just because they were born before him and he cannot keep doing their dirty work his whole life. He says the only way they can advance to the headquarters is by using Pildu. Pildu receives a CCTV footage showing his mother entering a house in a shabby area shortly before her death, and he goes to the location wondering why she went to such a place. At the location, Pildu finds a place to hide and watches some men drag a man into the building. Inside the building, they strip the man to his underwear and he begs them to save him. The boss reminds him that he was not forced to loan money, and he brings out a document the man signed which says if he fails to pay the interest, he will pay the full amount including the principal with his organs. A dog in the room barks wildly as the man says paying with his organs means death, and he continues to beg that they should give him more time to pay. The boss turns to the dog who is still barking wildly and smacks it with a baseball bat. The man watches in fear as the boss turns back to him saying he could not hear him due to the dog barking. The man shakingly says he needs more time and the boss raises the bat to hit him. But Pildu enters at that moment, distracting the boss. The men notice Pildu and ask what he's doing there. Instead of giving a clear answer, Pildu casually walks around and tells them to ignore him, saying he's just there to check on something. They assume he's a customer and ask him to leave, promising to call him when they're finished with their business. Pildu calmly reminds them that he'll leave once he's done. The boss, getting curious, asks Pildu what he really wants. Pildu responds that he wants to check the CCTV footage, which shocks the men as they realize he's not a customer after all. They laugh at his boldness, but the boss quickly warns that checking the CCTV won't come for free. He adds that Pildu's arrival is convenient since their current goods aren't enough, and suggests that Pildu should give him one of his eyes in exchange for access to the CCTV. Suddenly, one of the men tries to attack Pildu from behind with a hammer, but Pildu dodges the blow and kicks the attacker. He turns to the rest of the group and, with a cold tone, says that he knew they wouldn't listen if he was polite, but he only needs one of them to stay alive. The men rush at Pildu, but he swiftly kills the boss and two others, leaving just two men standing. He looks at the remaining pair and reminds them that only one of them needs to survive, then asks which one will talk. One man, trembling with fear, says they'd be killed if they reveal any customer information, and tries to offer Pildu money instead. Pildu, unimpressed, hits him with a bat, killing him. Finally, he turns to the last man, who, terrified, immediately points to a room and says the CCTV is in there. Pildu steps into the room and immediately notices lots of tubes filled with eyes. As he walks deeper into the room, he sees a man painting an eye. Pildu then mentions that he heard the CCTV footage is supposed to be in this room. The man turns around to face him, and Pildu comments that the room is full of prosthetic eyes, admitting he doesn't really know what this place is. Since he's in a hurry, he just wants a copy of the CCTV footage. The man responds, saying that Pildu's rude attitude hasn't changed and suggests that Pildu should at least greet him. Pildu just stares at the man, and the man is surprised that Pildu doesn't remember him. It turns out the man is the same student Pildu stabbed in the eye when they were in high school. In a dark alley, a man hands over some goods to another man, who notices there's more than he expected. The first man explains that there was a situation at the site, and a group of people barged in, demanding an eye. They start talking about the guy who works for them, mentioning how he's obsessed with collecting eyes and always keeps one for himself. The first man then shares that when the group tried to mess with this guy, he pulled out their eyes without using any anesthesia. The second man wonders how long this guy plans on doing things like that, And the first man replies that it might not be for much longer because he heard that the person who stabbed the guy in the eye is about to visit the site. Back at the site, the one-eyed guy tells Pildu to stop looking so clueless and to act like he's happy to see him. Pildu, uninterested in small talk, tells the guy to shut up and just give him the CCTV footage. The guy starts talking about how Pildu has always been stubborn about getting what he wants, which is why he earned a nickname back in school. Pildu interrupts him, calling him a one-eyed retard, and asks if he even knows who he's talking to. The man is shocked and angrily yells that he's the one Pildu stabbed in the eye for being noisy back in school. Seeing Pildu's blank expression, the man gets furious and lunges at him with a scalpel. Pildu dodges the attack but can't manage to fight back right away. After a brief struggle, the scalpel grazes Pildu's face, leaving him stunned. The man smugly boasts that the scalpel is so sharp that Pildu didn't even realize he'd been cut. He asks if Pildu has now remembered him, but Pildu says he is not interested in useless people, so it may be that he doesn't just want to remember him. The man attacks again, saying he will make sure Pildu remembers him for the rest of his life. He stabs Pildu with the scalpel and says he has waited a long time to do that. As he keeps drilling the scalpel into Pildu's wound, Pildu hits him with his head and he falls bleeding. He then says he now remembers him, and he should have taken out both his eyes back then. The man attacks again, and they start fighting. After a while, the scalpel falls from his hand and Pildu almost punches him. But he notices the monitor showing the CCTV footage, and he goes to check it out. He tells the man he will check that out first before deciding what to do with him. And this makes the man mad that Pildu plans to ignore him to the very end. Pildu watches the footage and sees his mom kneeling before the man and begging him. He asks the man why was his mom begging him, but the man switches off the lights in the room and says Pildu must be curious to know why his mom would kneel in front of him. Pildu tries to adjust his sight to see in the dark, but it is too late as the man stabs him with the scalpel again. Now in pain, Pildu removes the scalpel and throws it away. The man then explains that Pildu's mom came to the site and said she heard there were goods that she needed, and she promised to pay a good price. The man tells Pildu that he could not let such a big fish get out of his hands, so when she gave him a list of what she wanted and asked if it is possible to get them, he told her he will make it work. He says he asked if the compensation does not have to be money as he wants something different, and she promised to give him anything he asks for as long as he gets her what she wants. As Pildu holds onto his injured arm, the man is wearing night vision goggles, and he says the Manhwa group madam said she would give him anything, so he had to do his best and get her what she wanted, which is a middle-aged woman with white skin, long, straight hair, and red eye. He holds two scalpels, and he asks Pildu if he is getting a hunch of what his mother was desperately looking for. As Pildu tries to talk, he throws a scalpel at him and says his mother was anxiously looking for someone identical to her and also a corpse. This makes Pildu realize that his mother needed a corpse to die in her place. After succeeding in stabbing Pildu with the scalpel multiple times, the one-eyed man taunts him that it must have been a shock for him to find out that his mother went around looking for a body, as his confidence from earlier is nowhere to be found. He says Pildu can still beg for him to spare him. Pildu ignores him, and he asks why he does not want to beg as his mom was really good at it. He continues the story and says he changed the reward and told his mother that he would find the body for her if she gave him her son's eyes in return. He taunts Pildu by saying he should have seen the look on his mother's face and the way she spent all day on her knees begging him. He says Pildu's mom never agreed to give up his eyes, but he was not about to give up, and that is when someone came to see him and promised that they would let him see Pildu if he gave them his mom. The one-eyed man seems to be tired of the emotional family talks and says they should continue their earlier conversation. He picks up a hammer and walks towards Pildu, who suddenly straightens up. The man thinks Pildu has given up and says he will take good care of Pildu. Thinking Pildu still cannot see him, he swings his hammer to hit Pildu. But Pildu avoids the hammer, and in a swift move, he removes the goggles from the man's face. The man calls Pildu an idiot for thinking he has an edge because they are both fighting in the dark. He turns around trying to locate Pildu, but the room is pitch black and he cannot see anything. He tells Pildu to step out and fight, but Pildu only asks him if he cannot see him. Pildu turns on the light and says the scalpels are so sharp that he cannot even tell that his eye has been cut off. The man then realizes that he has lost both eyes. He cries out in anguish and holds on to Pildu's clothes. He says they should do things as planned, and if he takes Pildu's eyes out, he will implant them on him, and he will be able to see again. Pildu slaps him, and he falls to the ground, bursting his eardrums. He says they still need to talk, and he should be able to listen to his remaining ear. And he asks him who are the guys that came to ask for his mom. After a while, Tigu and his goons enter the building and see the man in his pool of blood and muttering words they cannot hear. Tigu slashes him with his sword to kill him, and one of his men says they should go look for Pildu, but Tigu stops them. He looks at the camera in the room and reasons that Pildu has probably seen who else was there apart from their mother. And he tells his men that he is sure Pildu will find his way. A few months ago, at the Manhwa Group headquarters, Tigu alights from his car at the entrance of the company to attend a meeting. The security men bow to him, and he tells them to stop frowning as it makes him feel like he is walking into a funeral. As he tries to enter, one of the security men stops him and says he cannot enter. Tigu angrily asks if he looks like a pushover just because he made a joke. And with a straight face, the security explains that they received orders that the meeting can only be attended by designated members. Tigu points out that he is Manhwa Group's third son, and the security says he is aware of that, but Tigu still cannot attend the meeting. This makes Tigu furious, and he shows them the knife in his pocket, saying they must have forgotten what his personality is like. The security men break out in sweat, but they still stand their ground that Tigu cannot enter the building. He asks them who is blocking him from entering the building, and Kang Mu arrives at this point and says he is the one who gave them the orders. Mu says Tigu still has not gotten rid of his old habits, and he cannot look positively on him when he brings out a knife whenever things do not go his way. Mu berates Tigu that he should be embarrassed by himself and says if he wants to fight with a knife, he should do that at his job, not at the head office. This makes Tigu angrier, and he points out that he is a president on the list of board members, but Mu says not all presidents are the same and Tigu is the president of a subcontractor. Kang Mu moves to enter the building while saying Tigu's behavior is one of the reasons the company is a mess. He then tells the security men to do their job properly. Tigu says Mu is just lucky to get the position he is in because he was born a minute earlier, and Mu turns back asking if Tigu lost his fear receptors. Mu loosens his clothes and says it has been a while since Tigu got hit, so they should fight to see who is on top. Tigu agrees that they should fight, and they are about to get at it, but Kang Chawuk arrives at that moment and stops them. Chawuk walks past them to enter the building, and he tells Tigu to stay unnoticed, do what he is told, and not try to obtain his brother's position if he wants to stick to the group. Tigu reluctantly bows his head to show respect to Chawuk. He reasons that they are saying he should deal with the mess they create for the rest of his life, and he wonders if they really think he will just decide to rot in their shadows for the rest of his life. He stares at the building and determines to show them who the proper person is for Manhwa's next term owner. At Tigu's office, his assistant gives him some documents on Manhwa's illegal businesses. He goes through the documents, and he is shocked at what his brothers have done. The assistant assures him that he can trust the information as it was obtained by Chinese hackers who are famous for their expertise in that area. He then asks if Tigu will be okay, as if the issue explodes they might be in danger. Tigu asks if he also does not believe in him, but the man points out that would not follow him if he did not believe in him, and Tigu tells him to carefully deliver the documents to Pildu. As they leave the office, the assistant asks why Tigu wants to give the documents to his younger brother, as the prosecutor's office is already filled with Kang Ildo's connection, and there is no guarantee that Pildu will decide to investigate his family. As Tigu does not reply to him, the assistant asks if they should look for someone else. Tigu then says he cannot trust other prosecutors because of his father, but with Pildu's personality, as long as he is aware of the illegal businesses, he will definitely begin investigation. Tigu says Pildu does not care about family, and they are only passing the knife handle to Pildu, who will dance a beautiful knife dance for them. And after that, they will capture Manhwa. Back to the present, Pildu is at a hospital recuperating from the injuries he got while fighting the one-eyed man. He thinks back to the man's words that some people have promised him that they would let him see Pildu if he gave them his mom. Pildu picks up his phone and wonders how far the involvement goes with his family. Kang Mu is exiting the Manhwa Group building when he notices his driver sleeping by the car. He hits the man and he falls to the ground. While other workers watch in fear, Mu repeatedly stomps on him, asking how he can be sleeping on the job after continuously receiving his pay. Mu's assistant, Choi Chung-sun, holds him to stop him and calls him Kang Mu. He says it is enough as there are a lot of people around, but Mu slaps him and says they are at the company, so he should watch what he calls him, and they no longer high school friends. Mu says it is due to Chung-sun's idle work that the underlings are in their current state, and Chung-sun apologizes. Mu continues his rant saying if Chung-sun acts that way again, his head will be cut off. Mu's phone rings and he picks up the call, but the person who called does not say anything, and he angrily asks who the person is. It turns out to be Pildu, as he remembers that when he was going through the CCTV footage, he saw Mu entering the building. Mu, who is still waiting for a response, asks if it is Pildu. Pildu then replies that it has been a while since he heard from Mu. Kang Pildu calls Kang Mu and tells him it's been a while. Kang Mu replies, saying not to tell him that Pildu actually thinks he killed his mother. He asks what Pildu would do if he really had killed her and questions Pildu if he would kill him, too. Kang Mu dares Pildu to try and asks if he truly believes he can take on all of Manhwa by himself. He tells Pildu to come find him if he's confident enough. In his training center, Kang Mu is relentlessly hitting a man who has been chained and wrapped inside a punching bag until it finally falls to the ground. He then orders his men to take it out to the trash. When Choi Chunjun updates him on the progress of the task assigned to them, he adds that they are looking forward to completing it. Kang Mu comments on how he gave his younger brothers a bit of leeway because they are his family, but now they are trying to take advantage of him. He admits that he always knew Tigu would act this way, but is surprised to see Pildu behaving in the same way. Kang Mu orders his men to act quickly, stating they can't afford delays with their father's election approaching. Chunjun reassures him that he understands and will handle it. Kang Mu tells Chung-sun to keep a close watch on Tigu and his surroundings, expressing concern about Tigu's recent, unsettling silence. Chung-sun questions why he has to monitor Tigu, suggesting it's risky if Tigu finds out about the hidden tunnels they've created. Kang Mu orders him to maintain his distance and focus on the plan, asking if he has to spell out every single step. Chung-sun quickly apologizes, saying he'll work on improving, which irritates Kang Mu. Annoyed, he tells Chung-sun he's tired of hearing that same line. Chung-sun lowers his head slightly to apologize again, but Kang Mu grabs his head, pressing it down to show him a bloodstain on his shoe, and asks if he wouldn't feel embarrassed to see his boss walking around with that mess. Kang Mu then reminds him that he used to be better and tells him to show those skills again, after such a long time. Feeling humiliated in front of the others, Chung-sun reluctantly bends down to clean Kang Mu's shoes. Kang Mu taunts him, asking if he's lost his touch, which brings back memories for Chung-sun of his past with Kang Mu. Determined not to disappoint, he tells Kang Mu he'll do it immediately and begins cleaning the shoe with his tongue. Once he's done, Kang Mu smirks and tells him to keep up the good work from now on, adding that he's clearly skilled at it. Feeling weary, Chung-sun stretches his body and mutters to himself, wondering if it's already time for his shift. Just then, Pildu arrives in his car, looking around and half expecting to see Chung-sun, as he knows Kang Mu and Chung-sun are usually inseparable. Pildu considers how he should address him, questioning if he should start calling him team leader Choi Chung-sun. He knows that to reach his second brother, he'll first have to face Chunjun, realizing it won't be an easy task. Chung-sun sits at the entrance, spotting Pildu from a distance. As he watches, his phone rings and one of his men asks if he's come across anything significant yet. Chung-sun replies that he hasn't and tells them to go home, reassuring them that he'll handle the rest himself. Pildu walks up to Chunjun, noting that he doesn't look surprised and asking if encounters like this happen often. Chung-sun replies, saying he's actually surprised, as Pildu is the first person to come there alone. He adds that he has no idea what kind of business Pildu has with their president, but suggests he go back home for the day, mentioning that tomorrow is payday, and he'd rather not deal with any nuisances on a good day. Ignoring the suggestion, Pildu attacks him. As they clash, Chung-sun can't help but reflect on how challenging life is as a salaried worker, and he retaliates, striking back at Pildu. While they fight, Chung-sun tells Pildu that he expects to see him but never thinks he will actually show up. This prompts Pildu to remark that Chung-sun is just the same as always, recalling how Chung-sun was once a formidable MMA fighter who won second place in a championship. Chung-sun responds, saying he has changed a lot since then, and asks Pildu if he is truly here to fight against his brother. Aware that it's not really his business, he decides to ask Pildu what he hopes to gain from battling his brother. He suggests that perhaps Pildu should consider begging for forgiveness instead. Pildu, however, insists that it's none of Chung-sun's concern, stating firmly that it's a family matter. Chung-sun tells Pildu not to be like that and asks if he understands the position he's in right now. He points out that it's not that he doesn't recognize him, but Pildu brushes him off, insisting he isn't there to talk or relax. He warns Chung-sun that if he doesn't move aside, he will have no choice but to fight him and gets ready to attack. Chunjun, observing the exchange, remarks that Pildu talks just like his brother, which infuriates Pildu and ignites the fight between them. After an intense battle, Chung-sun manages to beat Pildu down, looking down at him as he asks if that's all he's got. He questions how Pildu plans to take on his brother and the entire power of Manhwa with such little effort. Chung-sun advises him not to be so cocky and tells him to come with him instead. Kang-mu sits up on his bed, and he realizes that Pildu is around. Meanwhile, Chung-sun is still beating up Pildu. He says he has nothing against him, but he is only doing what he has to do. He then drags Pildu towards the house, but Pilfu stands as he regains his strength. As Pildu tries to catch his breath, Chung-sun says he is just as stubborn as his brother. He prepares to punch Pildu, asking if he really has to go that far, but in a swift move, Pildu slams him against the wall. He does it again, and Chung-sun angrily asks if all he can do is try to close the distance since he is at a disadvantage in melee combat. Pildu does not reply but goes to throw a punch which Chung-sun deflects, but it was actually a fake punch and Pildu goes on to hit Chung-sun's stomach. Kang-mu walks out of the room and down the stairs. He seems to hear some noise and looks towards the direction. Meanwhile, Pildu now has Chung-sun in a chokehold, which makes Chung-sun remember that Pildu is Kang-mu's brother. This makes him angrier, and he uses his strength to kick Pildu off him. He then points out that Kang-mu only told him to bring Pildu, but he did not specify that he should bring him back intact. In a swift move, Chung-sun attacks Pildu, grabs his leg, and makes him fall to the ground. He twists his leg to an uncomfortable position and taunts Pildu as he thinks he would be at an advantage once he closes the distance. Pildu ignores his question and tries to stand, but Chung-sun continues to twist his leg, making it uncomfortable for him. He yells that Pildu should give up or his leg will be broken, but Pildu manages to grab Chung-sun's leg and twists it. Chung-sun realizes that Pildu never had any intention of surrendering and he will break his leg. He then yells out, trying to stop Pildu from breaking his leg, but it is too late. As Pildu walks towards the building, Chung-sun, whose leg is now broken, says his condition will not be the same for Pildu as Kang-mu will not go easy on him just because he is his younger brother. In pain, Chung-sun goes on to say Pildu does not know Kang-mu. He explains that everyone thinks he is looking out for Kang-mu because of money, but that is not true. He points out that he has never won against Kang-mu, and he has never even thought about winning against him, as Kang-mu has always seen fights as boring games because to him, it is not just about winning or losing, but about making his opponent kneel before him, and he will break those who resist until the end even if it means killing them. Chung-sun tells Pildu to think carefully as once he steps beyond the door, he will die, so he should hide and live his life somewhere else. Pildu replies that he wants to do that, but he does not have a place to hide anymore. Pildu presses the doorbell continuously. Kang-mu walks towards the door in the building he is in and opens it slightly. As the door is opened, Pildu gets prepared to attack, but it turns out to be Kang-mu's wife and she falls to the ground, shocked to be almost attacked. Chung-sun laughs, saying he thought Pildu would leave after hearing what he said, but it turns out he is more of a man. As Chung-sun starts laughing, Pildu asks if it looks like he is in the mood for a joke. He then asks for Kang-mu's whereabouts. Chung-sun replies that he will be signing his death warrant if he discloses that information. But Pildu steps on his broken leg, and he yells out in pain. Pildu twists the leg continuously and tells Chung-sun that he suggests he spills it out before he renders his leg useless for life. Chung-sun says he is not worried about his leg and asks Pildu if he has any idea who Kang-moo is. He then says Kang-moo is a president at one of Manhwa's subsidiaries and Pildu cannot touch him. Chung-sun advises Pildu to give up before it is too late, but Pildu says he will also give him a piece of advice, and that if he does not tell him where Kang-moo is, he will kill him instead of Kang-moo. Meanwhile, Kang-moo is with his security where he is interrogating a man he caught. He asks the man how he knew of his location as it is classified information, and the man timidly replies that he is not sure what he means as he was only waiting for a friend in his car. Kang-moo advises the man to try to come up with a better lie next time as he was caught taking a photo of Kang-moo with a woman. The man is now covered in sweats as he tries to save himself, but Kang-moo punches him saying he do not care that he is secretly investigating him. He then asks if he is the friend the man is waiting for. The man, who is now bleeding, does not reply, and Kang-moo angrily punches him repeatedly with the camera asking if he is the man's friend. Kang-moo continues to punch the man even after he is unconscious until one of his men calls his attention to the man ID card. It turns out the man works under Manhwa Group's business support department, which is under his elder brother, Kang Chawook. Kang-moo reasons that Chawook still does not trust him even though he did everything he told him to do. One of the men asks if they should take care of the man quietly, but Kang-moo, reasoning that he will not stay put if that is how Chawook wants to play, replies that they should send the man back. The man is surprised and he suggests that they should find out why he sneaked in, but Kang-moo throws the camera at him asking if he cannot hear him. The man, who is now bleeding, carries the unconscious man out of the area while the remaining Kang-moo security men watch with unease. Kang-moo asks of Chung-sun and a man replies that he is probably standing guard at his house. He then tells the man to call him and inform him that before the big event with his elder brother, Chung-sun should prepare a fighter he can let his stress out on. Meanwhile, Pildu is still interrogating Chung-sun of Kang-moo whereabouts. Chung-sun says he do not know what has gotten into Kang-moo lately, but he does not like staying in one place for long and he has hired more bodyguards than before. Chung-sun points out that Kang-moo only hires those well known in the industry, so going to see him alone is a suicide plan for Pildu. Pildu insists that it does not matter, but Chung-sun argues that it matters and he tells Pildu to think about what will happen to him if he mess up as Kang-moo has sharp instincts. After smoking for a while, Chung-sun speaks out that there is a place that Kang-moo likes to go by himself. But the problem is no one knows when he goes there as he only visits whenever he feels like it. Chung-sun says he will contact Pildu when he gets a call, so he should wait for a while. But Pildu says if he wanted to wait, he would not have gotten that far. This makes Chung-sun feel frustrated, but his phone rings and he picks it to receive the order from Kang-moo. He stares at Pildu and tells the man on the other end to inform Kang-moo that he will prepare someone for him shortly. As Pildu goes to where Kang-moo is, he remembers Chung-sun asking him if he has any clue of how many factories there are in the country that is owned by Manhwa. Chung-sun says there are 145 of them, and that there are many factories, yet no one outside would know what happens inside. As Pildu beats up the guards at the location, he recollects Chung-sun saying Kang-moo is very aware of that fact, and only the driver and secretary will be at the entrance because it needs to be highly confidential. Chung-sun instructs Pildu to go to the third storage room, where Kang-moo experiences the hobby only him can enjoy, in a factory with no one to stop him. Pildu enters the storage room and sees a lot of bodies that were obviously beaten to death. He remembers Chung-sun saying Kang-moo ignores all rules and plays a game only for himself. Kang-moo, thinking Pildu is the fighter Chung-sun brought for him, says with turning to look that he can take as much as he wants if he beats him. Pildu asks if there is something more than money, and Kang-moo asks what he wants. He then replies that he do not need money and he just wants to know who killed their mom. Kang-moo then realizes that he is speaking with Pildu. He sighs and curses Chung-sun. He then turns and tells Pildu that it looks like there is no one to trust in the world. Pildu admits he has never had that issue because he's never trusted anyone, not even his own family. In response, Kang Mu explains that he finds it hard to like Pildu, especially after hearing Pildu's words, because his attitude reminds Kang Mu of his own past when his family abandoned him for being difficult. Pildu quickly corrects him, saying that it was actually he who left his family, not the other way around. Kang Mu nods, agreeing and saying that he's not surprised. He even thinks it's only natural for Pildu to live away from home. Then, Kang Mu picks up a wad of cash and throws it into the air, letting it rain down towards Pildu. Watching Pildu's reaction as he starts throwing punches at the money, Kang Mu notes that Pildu is different. He mentions that others would have been blinded by the sight of cash, reminding him of all the people he's beaten up in the past. He tells Pildu that he doesn't fit in, not only with his family but also in Manhwa, saying he's not needed because he doesn't care about money, even while they're still trading punches. As the fight continues, Pildu falls to the ground, coughing, while Kang Mu pauses, wondering if the higher-ups would have treated Pildu differently. He then comments that he doubts Pildu traveled all this way just to mess around with his brother and urges him to show some real effort. Breathing heavily, Pildu struggles back to his feet and fires back, saying Kang Mu talks too much for someone who hasn't shown much strength himself. Annoyed, Kang Mu throws a punch, snapping that Pildu must be joking and remarking how different he is since they last met. Kang Mu lands a solid hit on Pildu, damaging his nose, which makes Pildu cry out in pain as blood starts to flow. Kang Mu tells him he's lucky the punch didn't send him crashing to the ground and taunts him, asking how long he plans to keep running away like a scared rat. Kang Mu then suggests that if Pildu is going to waste his time, he might as well help him hear the truth directly from their mother and asks what he thinks about that idea. Pildu's gaze lands on a screwdriver nearby, and he replies that he came here specifically to get answers. Signaling with his hand for Kang Mu to bring it on, he challenges him to start trying. Kang Mu grows angrier, questioning Pildu's disrespectful way of talking to him. Meanwhile, one of Kang Mu's men gets a call from Kang Tigu, who's currently in a car. The man updates Tigu, saying they're watching closely, and that either Pildu or Kang Mu will likely make it out of the meeting. When Tigu asks about the other plan, he reassures him not to worry. He then adds that Kang Mu suspects Kim Muso is working for his eldest brother, just as Tigu had anticipated, and asks for further instructions. Tigu instructs him to leave Kang Mu's area, warning that things could get complicated if he's seen. He suggests laying low for a few days, calling it a mini vacation, and ends the call. Sitting in his office and smoking, Tigu ponders how all the power and influence he desires are aligning perfectly. He scoffs at Pildu for going alone and calls him a fool. One of Tigu's men, concerned, asks if it would be game over for them if Kang Mu catches Pildu while they remain inactive, mentioning he thought they were the ones planning to get Pildu. He quickly apologizes when Tigu sharply questions why he's addressing Pildu so casually, as if they're friends, clearly irritated by it. Tigu then reminds him of the incident at the warehouse auction, where Pildu single-handedly took on the Gangbuk gangsters. He goes on to say that he knows Kang Mu, his second brother, has an appetite for fighting, but he's also convinced that Pildu, being as intense and determined as he is, will stop at nothing to get what he wants. Assuring his men, Tigu insists that Pildu's presence will bring them nothing but trouble. Pildu raises the screwdriver, ready to stab Kang Mu, but Kang Mu dodges swiftly, remarking that he knows Pildu's moves too well. With a quick kick, he knocks Pildu off balance, grabs the screwdriver from him, and comments that he'd expected only Tigu to rely on weapons like that. But it seems Pildu is just as willing to fight dirty. Kang Mu sneers, asking if Pildu considers himself some sort of thug now. In response, Pildu questions if that's the reason Kang Mu sent their mother away. Pildu then asks why their mother even turned to Kang Mu for help. Kang Mu replies bluntly, saying she should have just stayed at home, but complaining won't change anything now. As they continue to argue, Pildu notices a bag labeled Ramadan and becomes distracted by it. Noticing Pildu's shift in attention, Kang Mu charges at him, shouting for him to focus so they can finally settle things between them. Pildu grabs a handful of the sandy product and throws it in Kang Mu's face, seizing the moment to land several powerful punches. After a series of hits, Pildu starts to lose his breath, and Kang Mu smirks, asking if he's done. Taunting him further, he challenges Pildu to keep going if he still has more fight left, saying he can take a few more punches. Pildu tries to strike again, but Kang Mu is ready this time. He counters with a swift attack, slamming Pildu against nearby containers. Kang Mu then tells Pildu that destroying him won't bring him any benefit and questions if he'd rather just forget what happened to their mother and work quietly for his company. Kang Mu says that once Pildu gets a taste of real money, he'll likely forget about the whole situation. He encourages Pildu to relax, hinting that they can find him some work if he's willing to play along. Still struggling to catch his breath, Pildu responds that he wants nothing to do with their shady operations. He mentions that he reviewed the company's accounting report and noticed they've been slacking on proper waste disposal due to budget cuts. Pildu points out that piling up waste at the factory and dumping it during rain is illegal. Kang Mu tries to mock him, saying he's acting like a prosecutor right to the end, but Pildu ignores him, gripping the wheel of one of the containers and starting to turn it. Pildu warns that under the Waste Control Act, they could face up to 7 years in prison or a fine of 70 million won. Annoyed, Kang Mu snaps at him to quit acting like a rule-obsessed nerd and demands he get his hands off the containers. In response, Pildu grabs the wheel with both hands, saying they should put trash where it belongs, and turns it fully until the toxic substance inside the container begins to spill out. Shocked, Kang Mu calls him crazy, warning that the substance is dangerous. But Pildu ignores the warning, stepping toward Kang Mu and landing a hard punch. The two begin brawling fiercely, exchanging punches as the toxic substance fills the air around them. After a while, both men start to weaken, their movements slowing as the fumes take effect. Gathering the last of their strength, they each throw one final punch at each other, and, exhausted, both collapse to the ground. Kang Mu lay on the ground trying to catch his breath, but Pildu gets up as the screwdriver is now in his possession. He jumps on Kang Mu to stab him. Kang Mu tries to stop Pildu, but he is already weakened. The screwdriver slowly pierces his bozy, and he yells at Pildu to stop. But Pildu only yells back asking who killed their mother. The door to the third storage room is slowly opened and Pildu steps out. Walking slowly out of the room, after a while, Kang Mu, who is seriously injured, follows suit. He calls Pildu names and wonders if he really think he can get away with what he did after letting him live. Kang Mu walks out of the building without knowing his is being watched. He calls his men and tells them to come to his location immediately. He informs them that Pildu came by and tells them to gather everyone from the HQ and bring Pildu to him. He also tells them to bring Chung-sun. His men seems to hesitate, and he yells at them to bring Chung-sun to him as he is the one who told Pildu about his location. Kang Mu suddenly grunts in pain and drops his phone. It turns out that the person watching him is actually Kang Taegu, who is now stabbing Kang Mu from behind. He twists the knife to get it deeper into Kang Mu's body, while covering his mouth to prevent the man he called from suspecting. Taegu calls Pildu an idiot that can't even take care of an issue and is making him clean up after him. Kang Mu is shocked, and he calls out Taegu's name. Taegu taunts him for still looking down on him. He then says Kang Mu has to die by Pildu's hands so things can go according to his plan. Suddenly, Kang Mu's men arrive searching for him, and Taegu immediately stabs him completely with the knife, making Kang Mu almost lose consciousness. Kang Mu falls to the ground and Taegu hides the knife behind him as men see them. They ask Taegu why he is there, but he yells at them and calls them idiots for not knowing that Pildu came by. The men start apologizing and Taegu asks them where they have been while his brother was getting killed. He uses his hand to apply pressure to Kang Mu's wound and starts blaming Pildu. The men stand as they are confused and Taegu yells at them to call for an ambulance, and he threatens them that they are dead if Kang Mu does not make it. The men quickly call an ambulance and Taegu starts reassuring Kang Mu to hold on a bit longer as an ambulance is on its way. In a feeble voice, Kang Mu tells Taegu that no matter how much he struggles, he will never have the Manhwa group as he had already told Pildu everything. The men notices Kang Mu is talking and they try to move towards him, but Taegu yells at them to get out and bring in the ambulance, saying he will protect his brother. Tigu starts faking tears, but as the men leave, he turns to Kang Mu with a smirk and tells him to be more worried about his own life instead of him. He then chokes Kang Mu to death, saying he will send Pildu after him very soon. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Kang Chawok is pouring a cup of wine for his father, Kang Ildo, at a private dinner he had prepared. He says he remembers Ildo had a particular taste for the medical wine, and it took him some time to prepare it for him. Ildo comments that he can tell the wine is different by looking at its color, and he is not sure he can remember the taste since he has only had cheap liquor since he entered the political scene. Ildo says he must repay Chawok for bringing him such a precious liquor, and he asks what he wants. But Chawok replies that there isn't anything in particular that he wants, as he just wanted to visit and have a drink with his father. Ildo tells him not to be like that, and he should say what he wants like a man. He then promises to help him if it means helping his son. Chawok then admits that there has been noise among the management team, and they are trying to find fault with him for not having proper internal traffic control, and it seems Ildo might have to attend the next general shareholders meeting to settle things. As Chawok goes to explain himself, Ildo's secretary enters the rooms and whispers something to him. One of Chawok's men also does the same, and it seems they are telling them about Kang Mu incident. Ildo lights a cigarette and tells Chawok that they should have the drink next time. He asks why they are all making a fuss when the presidential election is so close and instead of being helpful, they are just making a fool of themselves. Chawok apologizes and says he should have stepped up to take care of them beforehand. Ildo dips the cigarette into the cup of wine Chawok poured for him and stands to leave the room. He tells his secretary to make sure the news does not get out to the public. He then tells Chawok to take care of his little siblings before he can try to manage a company, as he is being pathetic. Chawok holds in his anger without saying a word, and Ildo advises him that if he wants something desperately from someone, instead of bringing mere liquor, he should bring the thing that person desires the most that moment. Ildo leaves the room and Chawok picks up the cup of wine. He drinks it, including the cigarette his father dropped in it. As the inner door opens to show his men, Chawok says his father do not care to save his face in front of his men. He then tells him men to bring him what he desire. The doctors at Manhwa Hospital finish operating on Kang Mu and step out to announce that the surgery was successful. The men waiting anxiously outside breathe a sigh of relief and quickly call their boss to update them, promising to get in touch if any new developments arise. Among them is Tigu, who has also been waiting at the hospital. When he hears the good news, he is visibly annoyed and frustrated. Tigu returns to the hospital again later to check on Kang Mu. As he approaches the hallway outside Kang Mu's room, he notices it's filled with Kang Mu's men, all looking downcast. Tigu, irritated, asks them why they look so down, as if it's a funeral. He then spots Chung-sun nearby and notices he has a fresh wound. Tigu asks Chung-sun what happened, and Chung-sun casually brushes it off, saying he simply fell down the stairs. Tigu hands Chung-sun a gift basket, remarking that no one else would enjoy it as much as he would, and adding that it wasn't cheap. The men thank him, and Tigu enters Kang Mu's room. Standing beside Kang Mu, who is still unconscious, Tigu smirks and comments that when he was stabbed, he was thrown into a cramped, 4-person hospital room, while Kang Mu's room feels more like a luxurious hotel suite than a hospital room. As Kang Mu lies silently, Tigu urges him to stop pretending and say something. He wonders aloud if Kang Mu is really listening, or if he's just putting on an act to frustrate him until the end. When Kang Mu still doesn't respond, Tigu suggests, half seriously, that maybe he should just kill him right there. Suddenly, the EEG monitor shows an increase in Kang Mu's heart rate, causing Tigu to smirk as he reassures him that he's just joking. He adds that there's nothing he can do about it anyway, with his men stationed all over the place. Tigu tells Kang Mu he only dropped by out of curiosity, explaining that, no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't figure out why Pildu would let Kang Mu off so easily. He asks what they talked about back then, and Kang Mu's heart rate spikes again. This time, the doctors rush in to check on him, forcing Tigu to leave. As he walks out, Tigu thinks to himself that Kang Mu clearly doesn't want to discuss it, so he'll have to go ask Pildu directly. Out in the hospital parking lot, Tigu heads to his car. only to be surprised by Chawuk sitting in the passenger seat, waiting for him. Tigu looks reluctant and tells Chawuk he could have just called. He then asks why Chawuk decided to come here in person. Chawuk replies that he did want to call, but Tigu always seemed too busy, always running around, so he figured the desperate one should make an effort to come. Chawuk then informs Tigu that the doctors have said Kang Mu will never be the same again, even if he wakes up. Tigu responds calmly, saying he already expected as much. Kang Mu lost an extreme amount of blood, and if Tigu hadn't arrived when he did, they'd be planning a funeral right now. Chawuk nods in agreement and adds that the way Kang Mu was attacked suggests the assailant had every intention of killing him. He explains that the stab was aimed directly at the lung, a single, expertly placed strike intended to do the most damage with minimal effort. Tigu begins to sweat nervously, but Chawuk continues, explaining that the attacker must be someone highly skilled with knives, who knew how to go in for the kill quietly and quickly without attracting any attention. Chawuk then points out that this doesn't sound like Pildu's style at all. Rather, it matches a technique that Tigu himself has used many times before. Tigu realizes he's in serious trouble, but tries to keep his composure. Chawuk then goes on to remind Tigu that he was the one who taught him how to use knives this way in the first place. Taking the doctor's report, Chawuk tears it into pieces, angrily calling the doctors incompetent for only barely managing to save Kang Mu. With a cold tone, he adds that if they couldn't do their job properly, they should have let Kang Mu die, because now, with his condition, he's become a major risk to the company. Chawuk then instructs Tigu to report to HQ for work the next day, pointing out that leaving Kang Mu's position vacant for too long wouldn't be beneficial. He steps out of the car and, seeing Tigu still sweating in shock, warns him not to do anything foolish behind his back. With that, he walks away. Once Chawuk is gone, Tigu sighs in relief, thinking his heart nearly gave out from the stress. He reassures himself to stay calm, reasoning that Chawuk has no real proof that he was behind Kang Mu's attack. But as he reflects, Tigu becomes even more frustrated, wondering if Chawuk is just toying with him, or if he actually knows something. He decides to let it go and focus on the positive. After all, he's now on his way to HQ. Just then, his henchman calls him, and Tigu picks up, mentioning that he was about to make a call himself. He instructs his henchman to pack up everything in his office since they'll be heading to HQ the next day. Tigu starts to laugh, boasting about his success, until he realizes there's complete silence on the other end. He pauses and asks if his henchman is listening to him, wondering why he's not getting any response. Suddenly, Tigu's henchman screams over the phone, apologizing frantically. The scene shifts to Tigu's office, where his men lie on the ground, bleeding and, in many cases, unconscious. The henchman shouts that Pildu has stormed into the office, effortlessly taking down everyone in his path, claiming he's looking for something. Pildu, who was actually the one who called Tigu, then punches the man, who cries out in pain, and Tigu's anger flares as he listens. Pildu speaks to Tigu, saying he was beginning to wonder why Tigu had become so hard to track down. But now it all makes sense. Tigu's been aiming to get to HQ for a long time, and he finally got what he wanted. Pildu adds, in a mocking tone, that he'll be sending a gift to celebrate Tigu's achievement. Then, Pildu sends a video file, which Tigu opens only to see himself in the footage, stabbing Kang Mu. Realizing Pildu had been watching and recording the whole assault, Tigu is overcome with frustration and rage. Tigu yells in fury, but Pildu only taunts him, saying he's glad to see that Tigu seems to appreciate the gift, judging by his happy reaction. Pildu then asks if Tigu would prefer him to bring the gift directly to him at HQ or if Tigu would rather come and collect it himself. Tigu arrives at the location where Pildu is waiting and finds only a few of his men there. He angrily asks why there are so few of them, demanding that everyone should be assembled immediately. The squad leader explains nervously that he called everyone as quickly as possible, but could only gather those who were nearby. Frustrated, Tigu strides angrily toward the man, as he does not hear him clearly. He suddenly slips, falls to the ground, and stands up even more irritated. He demands again to know why the others aren't here, and the man explains timidly that most of them went to the lower regions to attend the opening ceremony for Tigu's new club. Furious, Tigu stabs the man, yelling if he thinks now is the right time to be celebrating a club opening when Pildu is inside his building. He orders him to get the others back immediately. Looking up at the building, Tigu realizes he can't afford to just wait for his reinforcements to arrive. But entering the building directly feels too risky. He quickly decides on a strategy and instructs the men present to grab their weapons and go inside to attack Pildu head-on. The men pick up their bats and enter the building. Two of Tigu's other henchmen are about to follow when Tigu stops them, saying that the men who went in should be enough. He points out that since there's only one exit, there's no need for them to get dirty fighting on the ground. He plans to wait for Pildu to be worn out by the initial attack, assuming that Pildu will eventually come outside, and that will be their opportunity to strike him down. Meanwhile, at Manhwa HQ, Seo Nambong, the director of management support, goes to meet Chawuk. Surprised by his rare visit, Chawuk asks why Nambong has come to see him. Nambong explains that he heard Chawuk called Tigu to HQ, so he wanted to find out more. Chawuk responds that with Kang Mu's position now vacant, it can't be left unfilled during such a busy period. According to company tradition, the next in line automatically steps up to fill an open position. Chawuk then asks Nambong if he's interested in the position himself. Nambong quickly denies it, saying he would never think of it, but he does express his concern. He explains that there was a reason Tigu was kept away from HQ in the first place, and asks if Chawuk is really sure that bringing him in is a wise decision. Chawuk acknowledges Nambong's concern. Comparing the two men, if Kang Mu was a loyal, obedient dog, Tigu is more of a wild dog, hard to control and unpredictable. Chawuk adds that with a dog like Tigu, they'll need to keep a tight leash on him for everyone's safety. But Nambong presses further, insisting that making Tigu president might be taking things too far. In response, Chawuk tells Nambong that he still needs to learn how things operate within the company. He explains that his decision to place Tigu in the vacant position wasn't just about filling the role. It's also a strategic move to keep his enemies close and under watch. Chawuk then remarks that Tigu might transform completely once he's given the authority of that position. He points to Nambong as an example, saying he looks like just another salaryman in a suit now, and no one would suspect the man he used to be. He reassures Nambong, telling him not to worry about Tigu, and promising that he'll handle things personally. Nambong, however, is concerned and asks if Chawuk intends to put Tigu in charge of Pildu. He insists that he can deal with Pildu himself, saying Tigu doesn't have to step in for this task. But Chawuk corrects him, reminding Nambong that they both understand each other deeply, as brothers do. They both know that only one person is keeping the Manhwa group afloat. Meanwhile, Tigu's men storm into the building to confront Pildu. They taunt him, asking how much longer he thinks he can hold out. Despite being outnumbered and facing men armed with bats while he's empty-handed, Pildu fights back, skillfully dodging their blows and taking them down one by one with his fists. Eventually, the last thug flees in fear. Undeterred, another of Tigu's henchmen charges at Pildu as he steps outside, but Pildu overpowers him as well. Watching from a distance, Tigu clutches his knife, observing as Pildu catches his breath. Pildu then approaches Tigu, taunting him by mockingly addressing him as President Tigu. He challenges him, saying that if Tigu has a problem with him, he should face him directly instead of sending others to do his bidding like a coward. Pildu comments that Tigu looks ready to stab him, just like he did to Kang Mu. He questions if Tigu is that desperate to get a spot at headquarters, wondering how the Manhwa group will react when they find out about his actions. Instead of replying, Tigu lunges at Pildu with a knife, swinging and trying to slash him multiple times. Pildu manages to dodge each attempt. They exchange blows for a while, and Tigu observes that Pildu's movements seem slower than before. Feeling confident, Tigu closes in and manages to cut him, noting that Pildu isn't as fast as he used to be. However, Pildu had anticipated this and is wearing a stab-proof vest. Tigu mocks him, asking if the once fearless Pildu is now afraid, but Pildu simply stares back, unfazed. Tigu taunts Pildu further, saying that he almost thought Pildu was still a threat. He adds that he never understands why people act tough around him when they can't even resist once they're hurt. Tigu then charges forward to attack, accusing Pildu of being a fool for reappearing only to get in his way when he could have just stayed out of sight. The two begin fighting again, with Tigu slashing at Pildu with his knife and Pildu throwing powerful punches in return. After a while, Tigu manages to get close enough to press his knife against Pildu's neck. He sneers, saying he could kill Pildu in a fit of rage, but admits he won't do it because it wouldn't bring him any real advantage. Remembering the video Pildu sent him, Tigu comments that he already knows exactly what Pildu would start ranting about if he let him go. So maybe, he muses, he should just kill Pildu to avoid that headache. Pildu, however, remains unfazed and challenges Tigu, asking if he truly believes that killing him will magically hand the Manhwa group over to him. Not intimidated by the blade, Pildu coldly tells Tigu that even if he does somehow seize Kang Mu's position, it would be a miracle if he could actually hold it. Tigu looks taken aback by Pildu's calm response, and Pildu explains that he's sure Tigu already knows deep down that, no matter what, he'll still be treated the same way even if he occupies that seat of power. Angrily, Tigu demands to know what Pildu thinks he understands and accuses him of pushing his luck, asking if he believes Tigu will spare him after saying such things. Pildu, undeterred, tells Tigu to think more carefully about what he truly desires. He then boldly grabs the blade, turning it away from his neck, and tells Tigu he'll let him have the Manhwa group. He asks Tigu if that wasn't what he truly wanted from him all along. Ignoring the blood dripping from his hand after grabbing the knife, Pildu tells Tigu that all he ever needed was a madman who'd be willing to wield a sword against Manhwa for him. Tigu, realizing that Pildu knew he was being used all along, shouts for him to stop as he walks away. Desperate, he demands to know what Pildu truly wants, insisting that there must be a reason for his actions. Pildu replies that all he wants is to find out who really killed their mother. Tigu, furious, shouts back, reminding Pildu that he's already investigated the matter thoroughly and concluded that it was Kang Mu who killed her. Pildu, unconvinced, says he's sure it wasn't Kang Mu and insists that Tigu must uncover the true culprit once he makes it to headquarters. In a flashback, Pildu is shown stabbing Kang Mu with a screwdriver as Kang Mu cries out in pain, begging for a chance to explain. Pildu finally drops the screwdriver, and Kang Mu, gasping, tells him that he only went to the building where their mother was killed because of company-related work. He claims he never had any interest in their mother's life. Pildu demands a clearer explanation, questioning why Kang Mu would go to that place himself if he wasn't responsible for her death. Grimacing from his wounds, Kang Mu explains that Pildu likely never paid attention, but Manhwa was already like a silent battlefield. Problems began to escalate after their father entered politics, as various people within the group started setting their sights on his position. Kang Mu explains that he and Chawuk can manage the smaller rivals, but the real challenge lies with the company's shares. He tells Pildu that with the shares controlled by his brother and the other directors, they couldn't hold back the older shareholders and their father's remaining allies from the merger, as these individuals had enough influence to take over the company themselves. Kang Mu continues, saying these people weren't about to simply hand over the chairman's position to him and Chawuk. With the company slipping from their grasp, they couldn't just stand by. Although their father founded the company, it was they who brought it to its current state of success. They felt it was their right to protect it. The other side quickly noticed their maneuvers, leading both factions to vie for control of the company. Each side raced to secure shares, knowing that control over Manhwa would come down to a numbers game. But this struggle was more complicated, as the person with the key shares, who could determine the company's future, was their mother. Kang Mu then suggests that someone might have murdered her just to claim her shares and seize control. Back in the present, Tigu arrives at Manhwa headquarters. He strides confidently into the building, smirking as all the men bow respectfully. He recalls Pildu's words, if he truly wants to control Manhwa, he must find out who was involved in their mother's death, and spare none of those responsible. Tigu begins clearing out the remnants of Kang Mu's belongings from the office, commenting that he had expected things to feel different at headquarters. However, seeing the way things operate, he finds it just as frustrating as before. Turning to the men who are packing up Kang Mu's things, he advises them that when a new person takes over a room, the first step should be a thorough cleaning. He then stands by the window, gazing out over the city. He muses to himself about why everyone seems to want to reach the top floor. Up here, the other buildings look like they're beneath him. He reflects that being in this elevated position, especially after leaving his previous basement office, has cleared his mind. His men look on as Tigu continues to think aloud, remarking that even though his mind feels clear, he's starting to get a headache and wonders if this is what altitude sickness feels like. One of the men, concerned, addresses him as boss and offers to get him some medicine. However, under Tigu's icy stare, the man realizes his mistake and quickly corrects himself, calling him president. Tigu scolds them, calling them idiots and telling them to start acting like they belong here. He then looks at their attire and throws some money at them, instructing them to buy proper suits. The men gratefully gather the cash and thank him as they exit his office. Tigu then turns to his assistant and tells him that the reason he hasn't been able to come to headquarters until now is because of those men. He instructs the assistant to train them properly so they'll be useful. Next, he asks if the assistant has looked into the matter he mentioned before. The assistant hands Tigu a thick document. Tigu, looking at the pile of papers, questions why he couldn't give him the information on a tablet, saying that using this much paper is just wasteful. The assistant, who still has visible injuries from fighting with Pildu, explains that they had no choice but to use paper due to security concerns. Tigu, unimpressed, calls him old-fashioned and says it's embarrassing to have him as his assistant. As Tigu flips through the document, he grows surprised at the list of names connected to his mother's death. They are all people who have been working at the Manhwa group for a long time. Curious, he asks his assistant what makes these men suspicious. The assistant explains that these individuals managed to get hired at the headquarters despite having no academic background or professional experience. The biggest surprise, however, is that all of them resigned on the exact same day. Tigu then asks when exactly this mass resignation took place. The assistant replies that it happened the day after his mother passed away. Tigu, clearly disturbed, drops the cigarette he had been smoking and crushes it under his foot. Continuing to read through the document, he realizes that each of these men received an extremely large severance payment. Shaking his head, Tigu agrees that there is indeed something very suspicious about all of this. Tigu stays silent for a while, and his assistant, noticing, asks if he's all right. Tigu smirks and tells him not to worry, saying that things are just starting to get interesting. He then asks if the Chinese hacker they hired has retrieved the information. The assistant confirms, explaining that as soon as they gave the hacker access to the main server, he got to work and seems highly reliable. The assistant asks if they should assign more tasks to the hacker, but Tigu shakes his head, saying there's no need, he was simply curious. He comments that the hacker appears to be quite clever, the type of person they need more of, not just muscleheads. Tigu then instructs his assistant to bring the hacker to him when he eventually comes to Korea. The assistant then asks if they should move forward with the people on the list. Tigu snaps at him, asking how many times he has to remind him to think strategically. He explains that now that they've made it all the way to headquarters, they need to avoid getting directly involved in any dirty work. Instead, their focus should be on climbing even higher up the ranks. He adds that Pildu will be the one to handle the dirty work for them. Tigu, feeling hungry, suggests they go out to eat. But, unbeknownst to them, a hidden camera in the office is recording their conversation. Elsewhere in the city, an elderly security guard is seen placing a parking ticket on a car. The car's owner spots him and angrily yells, telling him to take it off and accusing him of being senile for ticketing his car. The security guard explains that he tried calling the man several times, but he didn't answer his phone. He tells him that he can't park there, as it's a reserved spot for the disabled. The man responds dismissively, saying he already knows that, and then asks if the guard has any idea how expensive his car is and if he'll take responsibility if it gets scratched. The car owner warns the security guard that if this happens again, he'll come after him. But the guard stands his ground, insisting that the man should park in the regular lot so the space can be available for those who truly need it. This angers the car owner, who steps forward, trying to intimidate the security guard, and asks if he can't understand simple instructions. Just then, another car suddenly slams into his parked car, making him whip around angrily, yelling at the new driver and asking if he's blind. The car owner, now in a panic, examines his car and complains that it's completely wrecked, mentioning that he hasn't even finished paying for it yet. As the driver of the other car steps out, the car owner arrogantly says they should settle this with a few punches. But to his surprise, the driver is Pildu, who simply shoves the man against his own car, moving him aside without a word. Pildu walks away, leaving the man shocked and even angrier. The man yells after him, demanding he come back, but Pildu doesn't stop. Instead, he grabs the elderly security guard and slams him against a car. Pildu begins punching him as the man, stunned and confused, asks why Pildu is attacking him and what he's done wrong. A crowd starts to gather, and the old man shouts, urging someone to call the police. But Pildu doesn't stop. He keeps landing punches while the onlookers watch, too afraid to intervene. After a moment, Pildu pauses and asks the man if he is Park Cha-woong of the Manhwa group. Pildu pulls out a document from Tigu, explaining that he went through some trouble to track him down using an old photo. He tells Park that if he wants to hide, he should learn to do it better. Pildu then warns that no matter where Cha-woong goes, he'll follow him, even to the ends of hell. Finally, he demands that Cha-woong reveal the whereabouts of the people who killed his mother. In a flashback scene, a group of men is seen diligently cleaning a room covered in blood. The atmosphere is tense as Cha-woong, sharply dressed in a suit, enters the room. He looks at the men and complains that they are taking too long to clean. He demands to know how much longer they plan to drag their feet. The men, undisturbed, continue their work while Cha-woong grumbles about how weak and useless the younger generation has become. Cha-woong's frustration grows as he orders the men to work harder. He tells them to really put their backs into it and scrub with more effort. He emphasizes that they must check every corner and crevice to ensure there isn't a single drop of blood left. He adds that they should not even think about leaving until the job is done. One of the cleaners, frustrated, acknowledges Cha-woong's command and complains about how filthy the place is. Cha-woong, however, responds sharply, asking if it's the man's first day on the job, implying he should be accustomed to such things. Then, with a more serious tone, Cha-woong asks the man where the goods are. The cleaner looks surprised by Cha-woong's continued interest in this matter, muttering that Cha-woong will end up in hell for his actions. But Cha-woong, unfazed by the comment, calmly replies that the place they are in is already hell. Elsewhere in the building, a group of men is seen loading dead bodies into the trunk of a car. As they finish their task and prepare to leave, Cha-woong quietly watches them from the shadows. Their leader makes a phone call, informing someone on the other end that they have loaded all the bodies and will be incinerating them at the funeral home later. Once the men have driven off, Cha-woong steps out from his hiding spot and walks over to the car. He opens the trunk, revealing the bodies inside. A grin spreads across his face as he surveys the scene, commenting to himself that it's no wonder there's so much to clean up. Seeing all the bodies, he says a quiet prayer that may they all rest in peace. Then, with a mischievous look, he removes a gold ring from one of the bodies, biting it to check its authenticity. His face lights up with excitement as he laughs, calling it a jackpot. Cha-woong continues to loot the bodies, taking rings, necklaces, and watches, remarking that it looks like they had gotten rid of some rich people this time. He justifies his actions by saying he needs the money to pay off his gambling debts. As he pockets more jewelry, he is unaware that someone has caught him in the act. The next moment, a punch lands squarely on his face, stopping him cold. Back in the present, Pildu lands a punch on Cha-woong, his face full of frustration. He growls, telling Cha-woong to get himself together. Cha-woong, now tied up to a chair with his arms restrained, winces from the pain and asks, confused, why Pildu is doing this to him. Pildu, his voice steady and serious, explains that Cha Wung was paid a massive sum of 2 billion won as severance pay. He points out that Manhwa company doesn't just move money without a valid reason, making it clear that Cha Wung must have done something to deserve such a hefty payout. Cha Wung, looking weary but defiant, responds that he worked tirelessly for over 30 years. He claims that, given his dedication, he deserves at least that much money as compensation for his efforts. Pildu isn't convinced, and in response, he slaps Cha Wung across the face, his patience running thin. Cha Wung, still dazed, quickly shoots back, asking if Pildu is after the money. He tells Pildu that if that's the case, he's out of luck because he already spent every penny paying off his gambling debts. Cha Wung's anger starts to rise, and he vents his frustration about the younger generation. He asks what's wrong with youngsters these days, that instead of focusing on earning money honestly, he says they're always scheming, trying to rip off an old man like him. Pildu grabs a roll of tape and uses it to cover Cha Wung's mouth, silencing him. Then, without warning, he starts punching Cha Wung repeatedly. After a while, Pildu pauses and coldly tells him to nod if he's willing to answer his question. Cha Wung tries to speak, but the tape muffles his words. Pildu scoffs, saying he didn't expect Cha Wung to be so willing to talk that easily. Pildu grabs a metal rod and viciously stabs Cha Wung. The pain causes Cha Wung to weaken, and he begins to feel the effects of blood loss. Pildu pulls out his phone and starts dialing 119, the emergency number. As he dials, he informs Cha Wung that if he stays in this condition, he will die from the excessive bleeding. Pildu then drags a chair across the floor and sits down in front of Cha Wung. He looks him in the eye and tells him to nod if he wants to stay alive. After a moment, he holds up a list and orders Cha Wung to point out every person involved in his mother's death. Pildu tells Cha Wung that he is sure someone as weak as him could never handle everything on his own. He wants to know who is above him, pulling more information out of him. Cha Wung stares at the list, his mind drifting back to a painful memory, a flashback to when he was beaten for stealing from dead bodies. In the flashback, the leader orders the men to stop beating Cha Wung. He tells them to leave, and then turns to Cha Wung with a cold look. The leader tells him that even though he has worked for a long time, he should not have handled things so poorly. He warns Cha Wung that he knows the consequences of messing with company property. Cha Wung quickly apologizes, explaining that he shouldn't have stolen, but the loan sharks had threatened to kill him if he didn't pay back the money he owed. The leader, understanding the situation, tells him that he's in quite a bind. Either he will die right there or get beaten to death by the debt collectors outside. He admits that if he were in Cha Wung's position, he would have done whatever it took to survive too. The leader asks Cha Wung what the point is of selling stolen goods when he can barely even keep up with the interest. He then offers him a way out, a chance to escape the situation. Cha Wung nervously asks what the leader means, and the leader explains that while it's not an official task from the company, it's a confidential job. He only needs Cha Wung to quietly handle the items they give him, no questions asked. Cha Wung, still confused, timidly asks what exactly they're doing without the company's knowledge. In response, the leader punches him hard, silencing any further questions. Back in the present, Pildu slaps Cha Wung across the face, demanding to know if he still can't remember anything. He warns him again that if he keeps bleeding, he won't be able to nod his head anymore. Pildu then tells Cha Wung to look at the list once more, pointing out that everyone on it quit on the same day as him. He explains that the person behind everything must be one of them. Pildu asks Cha Wung if the name of that person is on the list. Cha Wung looks at the list and nods when he sees the image of the man. A flashback comes to his mind, and he recalls the man telling him to kill the Madam of Manhwa group. As Cha Wung nods in recognition, Pildu demands to know where the man is.